What's going on, guys? Colonel Meatshoot reporting for duty. Halo Infinite's tech preview has officially concluded, so after a busy and a far too short weekend, we get to break down the content and experiences that we've had on Halo Infinite so far. So today we're going to take a look at each weapon that was in the tech preview to get a feel for its strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. I'll talk about scenarios and situations that these weapons are going to work best in, so stick around for that. Before we dive into the MA40 assault rifle, I just want to quickly invite you to subscribe to the channel. The channel is about gameplays, fails and funny moments, guides and discussions, breakdowns like we are talking about today, gaming news, updates, leaks, you name it, primarily with first-person shooters like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and obviously Halo. Now for my current and now my new subscribers, we may continue. The first weapon we're going to take a look at is the MA40 assault rifle. This is the weapon that we start each match with. It's a fully automatic short to mid-range gun. It has a 36 round clip. It also is a ballistic weapon, or as Halo may call it, kinetic weapon. I'll get to why that's important here in just a second. Here's the MA40 in action to give you a feel for the kind of damage output that it has on bots from different areas and distances, as well as some tendencies that it will have. As you can see from the gameplay, it takes quite a few rounds to take down a bot fully shielded. If you haven't played much of Halo before, this is actually pretty normal. The time to kill in Halo is quite long, which requires more persistent engagement and creates a higher skill curve. Rather than most first-person shooters, Halo's gameplay is about utilizing all available tools and weapons in combination to win the conflict, rather than a quick draw with one weapon. Common conflicts result in a grenade or lethal thrown to begin or end the fight. Most of the primary weapon clip is fired, and the secondary is often used to finish off the opponent. It sounds harder than it needs to be, but give it a chance, stick with it. It's one of those things that really grows on you with time, and each kill feels earned and rewarding. The other thing to note about the MA40 is the bullet spread. As you hold down the trigger, the accuracy starts to get a little bit haywire. This is especially noticeable at mid to long range. Obviously, from a distance, you'll want to feather the trigger for an automatic weapon anyway. Although this is the starting weapon for each match, that's not to say that it's a bad weapon. In fact, most of my kills are made with the MA40, as I will typically keep this as a secondary if I pick up a power weapon in the field. As we take a look at the next weapon, the Pulse Carbine, now would be a good time to mention the difference between ballistic weapons and plasma weapons. Ballistic weapons are UNSC weapons that do the most damage to non-shielded targets. That's key. And it is most effective when finishing an opponent off, while plasma weapons are used by the Covenant and are most effective on shields rather than non-shielded opponents. So the plasma weapons are typically best used to start an engagement, as targets will most likely have their shields up by the time they're in range. The Pulse Carbine is a plasma rifle. In the current build, it's classified as an assault rifle. It fires 3 bursts of plasma energy, primarily for mid-range combat. This weapon can be found in various power item slots throughout the map to pick up during the match. Let's head back to the range and test it out. As we can see from the gameplay, the Pulse Carbine does a lot of initial damage and makes for a much faster TTK. However, when the shields are down, plasma weapons deal out slightly less damage. As long as you hit the target, this weapon won't pose any issues. As you may have noticed, a unique feature of the Pulse Carbine, projectiles will actually track your target. So you don't have to be quite as precise with every shot. The tracking ability isn't super long though, and the fire rate is slow compared to a lot of the other weapons, so keep that in mind. Outside of that, the Pulse Carbine was one of the most effective weapons in the tech preview in my opinion. Next, let's take a look at the battle rifle, or the BR-75 for short. This is a 36 round ballistic rifle, quick 3-round bursts with a decent zoom length. This is also a power weapon pickup found throughout the map. It's a very accurate weapon that's effective from mid to long range. Let's take it to the range and see how it does. It's a pretty powerful weapon for headshots for sure. In the field though, I found that the TTK can be a little bit slow with this weapon, especially against fresh and moving targets. Again, this is because it's a ballistic weapon, and it's not quite as effective against shields. Once the shields are down though, this will make quick work of anybody you face off with. The next weapon is the VK-78 Commando. This is a 20-round fully automatic rifle with a high damage output, but also a high recoil. I find this weapon to be most effective in mid to close range, as the accuracy can be kind of difficult to manage at longer ranges. This weapon does have a great 3x optical zoom though, so if you fancy keeping your distance and sticking your opponents from afar, not a bad choice. This weapon can also be picked up at various points throughout the map. Because the Carbine, BR, and Commando are typically classified as primary weapons, these may only appear in 1 or 2 areas on the map, and they're not as common as some of the other weapons, so get to know where they spawn. Now let's drop some bots at the range.
VK-78 Commando obtained.
Yep, it's a beast. I really like to have this weapon handy during a match because of the damage output. Although it is a ballistics rifle, it does a pretty decent job of penetrating the shields and taking them down as quickly as possible. Once the shields are down, the ballistics take care of the rest. One thing that sets this weapon back, aside from the really strong recoil, is its mag size. Although it feels like it could be an LMG, the clips only hold 20 rounds, forcing you to be selective when picking your window of fire. But as long as you're elusive and reloading, this thing will put down lots of Spartans for you. Okay, so let's switch gears and let's talk about secondary weapons. I mentioned earlier that Halo plays a little bit different than the typical arcade shooters and AAA first-person shooters, utilizing primary, secondary, tactical, and lethal equipment in combination is key to success in Halo. Very rarely can you enter and leave the conflict by using the same weapon. Your secondary weapon plays a big role here. The MK50 Sidekick is the standard issue pistol that you start each match with. It's a 12-round semi-automatic sidearm. It's most effective at close range. Just iron sights on this one, so not super long zoom length, but it complements the MA40 nicely, especially if it runs out of ammo and you need a quick draw to finish off the target. So let's go test it out. So with a full shield, even with a few headshots in there, it's going to take just about the entire clip. It's really not ideal with a full shield, but as we know, that's not really what it was designed for. Once the shields are down or even damaged, it's fast and a formidable tool to dispense your opponents. The reload time is also really fast, so you don't have to worry too much about getting stuck with this one. When we started the tech preview, I wasn't super into the MK50, but it's grown on me throughout the weekend. Next, we're going to take a look at another sidearm, but this one could be picked up mid-match. And this is also the most common pickup. It typically has 2 or more stations, and it's easy to get to. The plasma pistol is, well, a plasma pistol, for lack of a better word. The name pretty much sums it up. But what's unique about this sidearm is it's a semi-automatic and it has a charge capability. When feathering the trigger, the weapon heats at a slower rate than most other plasma weapons, allowing for more bolts to be fired before having to cool it off, and when it's fully charged, it does some serious damage to shields. So let's put this one to the test at the range. Okay, so if you couldn't see on there, the plasma pistol will take out the shield completely when fully charged. However, this will force overheating, and it has to cool off before following up. This gives you a huge advantage when initiating a conflict. Just follow this up with a sidekick or even an assault rifle, and watch them rage over how fast they just got smacked. Feathering the trigger also takes the shields down at a pretty good pace. Where the weapon is weak, once you get those shields down, a while to finish off the target. But if you're running with this and a ballistic to follow up, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Going back to primaries, the CQS-48 Bulldog is exactly what it sounds like. Short, stocky, and it packs a punch. It's a 7-shell shotgun that does big-time damage up close, but it has no range. Seriously, anything outside of 10 meters, don't bother. Switch weapons. The game even tells you that. This weapon is a primary pickup, so depending on the map that you're on, you might see this commonly as the pulse rifle or the battle rifle if you know where the station is. So let's see how it does out there. And so with that, the gameplay speaks for itself. It's a powerful, really close-range weapon, but keep in mind that you're still going to have to put out a minimum of 2 shells versus a fresh target. The nice thing about this weapon, though, is the fire rate is not bad for a shotgun. If you can get the drop on your target and it's close enough, you'll have a big advantage with a 1-2 punch. If shields are down or even close to being down, they won't walk away from a bump with this thing. Next, we're going to take a look at a special weapon, the Heat Wave. We got to see a little bit of the Heat Wave in action during the preview live stream from the 343 team. It is a shotgun with 2 firing modes, vertical and horizontal. The vertical firing mode concentrates projectiles to maximize damage output on a single target. Horizontal firing mode spreads the projectiles to tag multiple targets simultaneously. This obviously sacrifices the damage output to each target, and the firing rate is also adversely affected by the firing mode. Shooting vertically will cause the weapon to dish out follow-up projectiles a little bit slower than shooting horizontally. This shotgun also has far superior range to the Bulldog due to the nature of the projectiles at its range limits. Projectile drop will need to be accounted for. Alright, now let's whip out this beast at the range. So now that we've seen the heat wave in its full effect, I wanted to mention a little known tip that the game provides. It says that the projectiles can be guided when zoomed, which makes this an even more deadly weapon. There honestly isn't much downside to this thing. The speed and damage output can be a downside if you're not set up correctly and the targets get the drop on you, but as long as you're aware and elusive, this weapon will give you a healthy score on the leaderboard. Another special weapon to note is the Needler. This is a sidearm with a few distinguishing features. It's classified as a close-range SMG, firing 26 needles at the target at a time. This is also a homing weapon, so as long as you get the target inside the reticle, which is fairly wide for an SMG, the projectiles will actually track the target. Now let's drop some bots. Yeah, this weapon is unique from the design to the functionality. Very cool weapon to pick up. I haven't come across this one quite as much as the other weapons in the game, but it does spawn semi-frequently. The TTK is pretty fast, as we saw in the gameplay, so this thing is really effective on the field, especially when followed up with grenades. Then fling a few needles at them, they won't be outrunning anything. They'll get dropped pretty quick. It's kind of like shooting paper hornets on the school bus, except they impale you. Now let's take a look at the weapons that I like to call game changers. These special weapon drops will only be available occasionally throughout the match, and you'll see exactly why when we take them down to the range. The first one we're going to break down is the S7 sniper rifle. Ah, the sniper. Quick scopes, no scopes, trick shots. All things that I will probably never be able to do. Anyway, the S7 is obviously a long-range semi-automatic rifle with a massive damage output. It does have two zoom links, one at 5 times and one at 10 times zoom, and it one-shot kills with a headshot. Now this is with exception to the overshield consumable, but it still hurts like hell. Bots, brace yourselves. Yeah. It's devastating. Super long range, and it completely wrecks their day. Although the sniper is great, it's a highly sought after weapon, there are a few drawbacks. The fire rate is really slow, and you can only hold 4 rounds in a clip. The other major drawback, in my opinion, is the unforgiving hitboxes. You have to be extremely accurate with this thing, or you are going to get killed by your opponent's speed. There are not a lot of safe zones that you can set up shop and dish out condolence letters, so you do have to be aware of your surroundings to avoid getting backsmacked and lose that sniper. Or you could just run out of ammo because your thumbs are drunk. The sniper is also really popular and the entire lobby is going to be gunning for it, so the chances of you actually obtaining it from its station is pretty slim unless you pick it up off of a corpse. If you do manage to get your hands on it, and your thumbs cooperate, you get a clear shot, you're going to have a blast with this thing. Another special weapon is the skewer. The AIs really like when you pick this one up because they have a really twisted sense of humor, and they can't get over the fact that it's called the skewer basically because it makes Spartan kebabs all over the map. It is classified as a long-range sniper rifle, and it is breech loaded, which means you can only get one shot with this thing before having to reload, and that reload time is really long. The skewer also has 2 zoom links, however not quite as long as the S7. It also has a massive blade for melee, just in case you like Spartan chops on the side. Now that I'm hungry, let's barbecue.
Skewer obtained.
Tasty. If you make contact with weapon, they're done. You killed them. Flip them over so they cook evenly. One shot kill. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter the shield, that's it. The biggest issue with the skewer, as we saw in the footage, is accuracy. It's really hard to gauge this thing. Even trickier at long range because we have to account for projectile drop. Rockets are also non-explosive, so you have to be on point with this weapon, which is not easy to do when people are jumping around and sliding and grapple hooks zipping and all that craziness. So it's kind of like fishing for minnows with a 6-foot spear, but when you catch one, it's good eating. The next one we're going to take a look at is the most unique weapon in the tech preview, in my opinion. It's the Ravager. It looks similar to the skewer, but operates very differently. This is a plasma weapon that will fire 3 bolts at a time. When charged, it fires a pool of plasma on the ground or on the wall and does environmental damage. As we'll see in the range test, it's not going to do a whole lot of damage to static targets, but it's most effective for covering areas, blocking traffic areas off, and catching that annoying guy that's killed you the last 5 times so that you can catch him in a trap. Like the skewer, it has a massive blade in case you prefer a more primal approach to combat. Alright, back to the range.
Ravager acquired.
As we could see, even from a standard firing mode, it takes out targets reasonably well. It's not a common weapon that I saw in the preview, but I felt it was underutilized. We may see a buff or adjustment to the weapon to make it more favorable choice. Even in its current state, I still think it's a little underrated. Of course, the last on the list, the best for last, the M41 Spanker. If you haven't seen how this bad got its name, let me just demonstrate before we break it down. Sheesh. It's disgusting. A weapon of mass destruction. Shoulder-mounted, twin-tube rocket launcher. It's lethal, explosive, and can take out multiple targets at a time. If you get anywhere close to somebody with these rockets, they will instantly disintegrate. Poof! Whoosh! Gone forever. There are not many drawbacks to this weapon at all. The biggest thing that I would say is it is by far the most sought after weapon in the entire build. So it is not easy to obtain, and once somebody gets it, they sweat pretty hard to keep it. You also don't get many rockets, which is perfectly justifiable in the context of balancing. And in the tech preview build that we played on, it felt like the hitboxes were hit or miss from time to time. However, it is easily fixable by the time the full game releases, if 343 hasn't already cleaned it up. So before we wrap up, guys, I wanted to let you know about a bonus weapon from the tech preview. This came in late into the weekend and was not actually part of the Academy, but we got the Gravity Hammer. It is what it sounds like, a giant war hammer that renders gravity a joke. It's kind of like if Skyrim's giants had Thor's hammer Mjolnir as their weapon. So, yeah. We couldn't get any footage of the hammer in the Academy, but General Kid got some more footage of the Gravity Hammer in-game, along with a showcase of each weapon in the Academy. So I'll link his video down there if you haven't seen it already. And there you have it, guys. That's all the weapons we got to see in the Halo Infinite tech preview. I hope you guys enjoyed and got a little bit more in-depth exposure to each of these weapons, so that you're not still learning all of these weapons come launch day, because I don't want you to get frustrated because you feel like you're way behind the Halo Insiders. But if you want to be a part of the next flight test for Halo Infinite, register your email to be a Halo Insider yourself. I'll have a link in the description for that as well, so check that out. I'd love to play with you guys. I'm thinking that the next tech preview is going to feature a lot of PvP, and we might even get a little bit bigger maps to work with. We'll have a little bit more large-scale battles. I'm really excited for it. We haven't gotten any official news just yet at the time of recording this video, but man, I am absolutely loving this game. I strongly encourage you guys to give it a try. Love to play with you guys. So if you want to see more Halo, be sure to subscribe and make sure your notification bell is turned on too, because even if you're a subscriber, you won't always get notified about new videos. In the meantime, you guys, here's to a great year of gaming. I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.